7, 6, 5, 4. Okay, and good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this week's Marketing Gem, a weekly Link for Growth TV show, YouTube show, where a panel of experienced marketeers and digital professionals discuss current marketing issues and how they relate to SMEs. If you want to contact us, raise any points about the issue being discussed or suggest future topics, then please contact us via the Marketing Gem. That's at the Marketing Gem on Twitter. So this week we're going to talk about what's in a name. So today we're discussing the importance of finding the right name for your company and what to do and what not to do when considering a new name for your company. As usual, I'm joined by a panel of distinguished guests after last week's telling off of using the words experts. So, the first distinguished guest this week is Kevin Lynch, who has a background in media and digital technologies.
Hi Diane, thank you for having me on the show. Looking forward to this great topic.
That's great. And also with us is Jonathan Darby, who works in, or has worked in, the advertising industry for some of the world's biggest agencies and some of the world's biggest clients. Welcome, Jonathan.
Welcome. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me to take part in this. And I hope that our audience will find it useful in the current environment and with the current technologies.
That's great. And finally today joining us is Alan Livingston, and Alan has a background working with many SMEs as well as working for large multinationals in the life sciences sector. Alan.
Thank you, Diane. I'm really looking forward to this. I have, over the course of my career, been involved in quite a lot of naming projects, so I hope I can pass on some of the gems that I've learnt over the last few years to some of you who are watching today. So I look forward to this discussion.
That's great, and we hope to have Catherine Baldwin on, who was also on last week's show at some point, assuming we can overcome some technical problems. So, what's in a name? When it comes to your business, nearly everything. Once your company name just went on a billboard, a letterhead, maybe on the sign outside your front door, a truck or a van. But of course, and that was the end of the story, but of course now what happens is it's one of the most fundamental ways in which customers or clients can interact with you and your brand. So now the name has to go not only on things that we mentioned earlier, but also has to go on the internet, has to go on Facebook, and it's become much more difficult to pick a memorable name. The days of when it was, say, Blogs and Son to indicate it was a family firm seem to be long gone, because blogs is probably being used as a URL somewhere. But Alan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would say things have changed a lot. Markets have become a lot more sort of discerning. Customers want to be able to interact with something that's unique. They also want to be able to. You need to consider how easily they will find you. Now, if we start by talking about companies that are, it's the internet-based, as a lot of startups are, you have to be sure that your name is both memorable, it's easy to find, and to be honest, in this day and age, it doesn't do any harm if it helps to portray the business that you're actually in. One of the places I would maybe probably start is something we've been saying every single show, going back to the strategy. What's the strategy for the business? And from that, develop a number of keywords and start by brainstorming these keywords. You can. Probably later on in the program we'll talk about how to take that further. But before I go on too long, maybe if Kevin or Jonathan want to talk about what they would do in the first instance.
Yeah, so
Okay.
maybe Jonathan, you could follow on from what Alan was saying, please.
I think, and Kevin will expand on this no doubt, I think the first thing you have to remember is it's almost essential to have some kind of web presence. So you wouldn't need to get a name that you can own in the web environment, even if it's a, so nowadays it doesn't have to be a .com or a .co.uk, but it has to be a name that you can have ownership, so you can have a website with that address on it, and through that also have addresses for contact me at, or contact sales, or just sales information, if you're a plumber, plumbing at, etc., so that you can have all your names and naming in one environment, and capture everything there. So the first thing I would suggest is to go away and find a name that you can own, and ideally it says something about your business. So I own several business names. I own a company name called Council in certain environments, and that's for council. I wonder why I would have picked that as a sort of consultancy name. It's quite a good name. I had a couple of businesses at one stage involved with. One was CCTV for businesses, that went under the name of Secure, and another one for roaming connectivity, so you could remote control your home from your mobile phone about 15 years ago, and that went under the name of Romcon, as in roaming connection. The benefit of those was they all had short, memorable names that I could own, but also at the time when we did this, there was the ability to do sort of 0850 or whatever, 0845 or something like that, telephone numbers, and then you could have the word spelt out later in the touch dial format. That's all gone out of fashion because technology has changed, but there was a purpose for that name at that time. So just try and think of names that you can own and that are relevant to your business and that you can own in the digital environment. And at that, I will either hand over to Kevin or welcome Catherine to our team.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm late again.
Hail to the workers.
Hi, Catherine. We'll give you a chance to get in by asking Kevin for his thoughts on names and naming.
Well, these days, I would say, when you're naming the company, the first place you go to, the internets, and in particular, you're looking for an entity called a registrar. And for example, I'm not saying anything about my lifestyle, but I use UK cheapest, but www.oneandone.co.uk. Go to some website like that and start putting in potential company names. The first problem you've got is if the name's any good, it's probably gone. Hence, you have companies like Scribbler, SCRIBLR, or Flickr, FLICKR. So you're never going to get the correct English spelling of the word that you want, especially if you're looking for a .com. Consultation with someone like Jonathan, he had some good names for his business like Romcon and Secure. Those kind of things, those internet domains are probably available. You're invariably looking at a name that's misspelt, so it's a good thing and a bad thing. In that,
be dyslexic.
It's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is, the bad thing is that people who aren't particularly internet savvy are going to keep saying, I'm looking for you as Flickr, F-L-I-C-K-E-R, and you're going, no, F-L-I-C-K-R. But the good side of it is you got the name. So really, in terms of a friend was setting up a company, and I said to her, she said, how do I set up a company? I said, first to the internet, to the registrar, get your domain name, then onto the company's house registration page, and then use that same name in your company title. And then from that, you can then flow the rest of the things.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite good, Kevin, to go to the registrar and everything. But before you even do that, you need to think about what you're going to call yourself and then check against the registrar, having gone perhaps with a list of 10 or 15 options. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, and you might even have to go to 30, and you might have to, as I say, get someone like Jonathan who just sees words differently, who can spot that kind of connection. So ask around your friends.
If I can jump in at that point, one of the things that I said at the outset was generating a list of keywords associated with your business and what you want to portray. As Kevin rightly said, let's try and get that down from say 30 to 15, 10, 5 or whatever. Try these names out in a few people. Then what you can do is put these keywords into domain generators, and they will come up. There's a whole lot of online tools available that will take some of these words and do exactly what Kevin's talked about. Is will change them subtly to enable you to seek out a name that is unique, so that you can create a unique domain name for it. Make sure you search the internet, see what's available. I mean, there's nothing really to stop small businesses going to market with similar or even the same names as other small businesses, especially if they're in totally different geographical territories, as long as they are going to be trading within that. As soon as you want to try and go out into the wider world, sell via the internet and things, you obviously do have to have a unique identifier, whether it's a .co.uk, .com, .biz, .net, whatever. You have to be able to be found individually. But once you've done all that, I would say that before you go through the stage of registering it, try the name out with a few people and make sure that it is conveying what you want to convey in the particular name. And is it memorable? Is it is it unique? And then you can start creating the domains, because at that point then you're actually spending money on it, because although it's not that expensive, you do have to pay money to register things. Maybe if we go to Catherine, we can talk about, we obviously spent some time talking about what we were going to call this, and we eventually came up with the marketing gem. Maybe Catherine, if you want to explain how the process we came to come up with our particular name.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's lots of things flying around here. The first thing that struck me when we were thinking about this was that it's easy to pick a name if it's your own name. For instance, established company names like Marks and Spencer's and J. Sainsbury's and other sort of high street stores. It's just somebody's name, so they haven't really sort of gone into this sort of process. And there's nothing to stop you doing that with your own company. I mean, my own company, which is CB Graphics, well, CB is Catherine Baldwin. So I just put that together along with what I do, and it creates my company name. And likewise, lots of people can do that, but you do have to watch some of the pitfalls of that. For instance, I've had a lot of people come to me over the years with a name that they think is giving them a status, a power. So as a result of that, we've got elite law, we've got elite carpet cleaners, and we've got elite decorators, elite gardeners, but it doesn't actually mean anything after a while, because people are just falling into the same trap of let's try and pick a powerful word and stick it with what we do. So yeah, there's a lot of thought that has to go into it. Trying to pick something that's relevant to what you're doing, and obviously I missed the first bit of this, but writing down keywords about who you are, what you do, what your business is, what your product is, the sorts of people that you want to reach, all those are really sort of key elements to actually putting together a company name. It has to be relevant, it has to be unique. So using that as a basis to start with, which is kind of how we came up with the marketing gem. I think there was always going to be either marketing or advertising or design or something like that in the title, and then it was a matter of, well, how do we make this sound different? So after a lot of thrashing around on the email, we came up with a marketing gem in the end. And then, of course, you go through the process of, well, is this unique? Has anybody else got this? And also start to think about, well, how does it look when you put it into an acronym? The TMG is a great abbreviation of the marketing gem, and also thinking of how how your company name is going to look in social media. You don't want to choose something that's 3 big long words in a row, because nobody wants to type that in on Google to try and find you. So it's thinking about all those sorts of things as well.
Yeah. Jonathan, would you say the days of geographical limitation on the name, such as, I don't know, Watford Plumbing or London Plumbers, are over?
No, I think that if your business is to be in a specific geography, because you are a relatively small business, you know, Amersham Tandoori, it makes sense because it's a signpost to where you are and what you're doing. So I think that there always will be a case to have something that, you know, sort of, if you were Bond Street Jewellers, then it makes a lot of sense to say that you're in Bond Street, because just by saying where you are says a lot about the business that you have. So that, I don't think that will ever go away, but you might, if you then say, well, I'm Amersham Tandoori, but actually I own tandooris in 16 different places and I want to have an umbrella name for the company, then that changes, and you then have to have something that is effectively non-geographical. But I think, you know, location is a perfectly valid thing to have in your name if it's relevant to the business. If it is a signpost to come to me in Amersham to do this, or come to me in Watford. So it's a perfectly fair, you know, way of putting a name together.
Okay. Kevin, what are your thoughts on ramming an adjective and a noun together and mangling them to come up with a name?
Well, portmanteau words, they're fine. Can't think of any particular non-adjective things. One thing that does come to mind, one of my favorite restaurants, just jumping on the top of the tandoori, was an entity called Noodle Bar, which were in Wickham, Maidenhead, and Aylesbury. And somewhere along the way, some entity called Noodle Bar said you can't use that anymore, so they then had to rebrand as Noodle Nation. So as part of picking your name, do make sure you do good diligence, find out who else is using the name, where they are. What you can normally do, if you're quite savvy, is write a letter to them saying, I'm thinking of using this name, and ask them to sign a non-compete thing. You can say, I'm thinking of using the name, I'm going to use it just for this, you're going to use that, save all the trouble and expense. Let's agree that we'll acknowledge each other's property in this area, and you'll be on fairly strong ground.
Well, yes, I mean, one of the biggest naming crises in terms of businesses was the McDonald's restaurant and the small cafe in Bletchley that also happened to be run by somebody called McDonald's. So, and there, you know, that ended up, McDonald's too, ended up going to the High Court, I believe.
Most people can't afford to go to the High Court to solve that sort of problem. Most people will just have to fold, which is why better to get this stuff right at the start. That once you've got a proven, established trading record, you can say, well, I was here first, and that's quite a strong defence.
Yes, yeah. Alan, in your experience, what do you think of using domains like .biz, .london, .bank, .law instead of .com or .co.uk or .eu or .net or something?
Well, I mean, the whole reason these new domains have come along is because we were running out of .com, .co, .uk domains. Personally, I mean, if you're setting up a business, it would be ideal to get a .com. People still think of .coms as the main sort of trading one. However, because more and more businesses are now beginning to use .net, .biz, .london, or whatever, I think you know, through time it will become normal. It's maybe not quite there yet, but it's certainly growing.
I have a strong opinion in that area. .com is old school. If you can get a .com, take it. If you can get anything close to the .com you want, take it. At the end of the day, around the world, when you say business.com, it's there, it's discoverable. There are local domains, so for example, .co.uk was mandatory throughout the UK for the last 15 years. About 15 months ago, they dropped the requirement, so you can now get bbc.uk if you really wanted to, and things like that. If you're in a specialist business, like media, for example, .tv is relatively underpopulated. If you're doing computer stuff, you can get .io, which is currently very trendy, but that will cost you 200 quid because it's a special Indian Oceans registrar. It's all a bit of a scam. But I would avoid things like .london or .glasgow, .scotland, just because you're fighting 2 points of recognition there. First, for your business entity, and then for the domain. So in a sense, you're also not just publicizing your business, but this other domain that's lesser known. I, Kevin Lynch, struggled desperately with this kind of finding your own domain stuff. And there's 17,000 Kevin Lynches in the States of various repute. And in the end, the only Kevin Lynch I could get in the end was .net, and .net's okay. If you can't get the .com, I think it's an acceptable number too, because it's kind of easy to spell. There are lots of .net businesses, and that's quite sort of voguish in the worlds in which I move.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Kevin. I was just the reason I was giving the other alternatives was I was assuming that the .com was not available, because really the vast majority of memorable combinations have probably already gone.
I think it's worth remembering that you can use the non.com or non.co.uk, but you do need to spend money, if you're going to do that, on making that name visible. And that means it has to appear almost like a logo. It has to be, Kevin mentioned earlier on Flickr. Flickr. Now, initially, to make that clear to people, what you'd probably do is on every business card, you'd write Flick in lowercase and then put a capital R at the end of it, or something that accentuates that part of the name. Equally, there's no harm, when you're doing your letterhead and things like that, is if you've got a more difficult to discover email address, is make sure that it is big and readable on the letterhead, on the business card, on every piece of communication that you put out in front of your potential customer. And don't be shy about it, because it's going to be the most powerful method of people navigating to you for, let's say, the next year, well actually for the rest of the existence of your business.
Okay, so Catherine, of course, you and I, perhaps both being designers by training, tend to think of things in a much more visual way, but you outlined earlier on how everything was elite this, elite that and everything, but the use of synonyms can be quite powerful, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's nothing to say it can't be used, but perhaps just have a look in the area or the marketplace where you're at, particularly if it's a local area to you, to see who else is using it. There's a company I did some work for, and no sooner they had all their business cards, their letterheads printed, than they decided they didn't like the name anymore because there was someone 2 doors down with a very similar name to them. So yeah, it's just a matter of doing a bit of homework sometimes, and just have a wander around your own neighbourhood and see who's already there. And perhaps have a think about. I mean, it's interesting sometimes. You sort of say to people, well, what does your company do? What is your underlying your underlying point of being, as it were, and you ask them to perhaps write down a mission statement for their company, which can help to outline exactly what it is, what they're offering, and who they're offering it to. And that can actually be really hard. But I think once you've actually decided in your own mind who you are and what you're doing, it does help in putting together an idea of what your company is all about, whether it's to do with a name, whether it's to do with the sort of colours, whether you want your name to be represented in a symbol of some sort, or whether you're looking at a typographical sort of logo. very often, just I can't think of one off the top of my head now, but it can just be a couple of colours stuck together, and you think, oh, that's so and so, but rather than actually using the name. But the name has to represent who you are, and I think starting with a mission statement is quite important.
Yes. Jonathan, how important is it that the name sounds right?
To be honest, I would say it isn't essential. However, if you're going to have a name that's a bit off-centre, that isn't obvious, then you do have to invest more time and money in making it famous. So many years ago, a company called Gruner & Jahr launched a magazine called Prima. And I had a bit of an argument with the marketing team at Gruner & Jahr saying, I think you're making life very difficult for yourself. Anyway, I was proved wrong in spades, and it became the biggest selling monthly women's magazine in the UK for a period of time. But what they did was they invested in the product. They produced a very good middle-of-the-road women's magazine. The real USP was that they provided a free dressmaking pattern in every issue. So basically you paid, let's say, £2 for the magazine, and you got effectively perceived value at least £2 worth of dressmaking pattern in the magazine. So effectively, if you were heavily into that, which at the time seemed to be quite a popular area, you got a free magazine. That's an investment behind your brand name or behind your company name. So think about it in those sorts of terms. If I'm going to have an oddball name, it may become memorable for its own good reason because no one's got anything near it. But it may mean that you have to put more time, effort and money behind making it famous.
Yeah, okay. Kevin, when you're thinking about the name and everything, how important is it to check how it relates in AdWords and other search engine results?
It's definitely part of the diligence process, and you want to see what comes up with it. I mean, I think in this day and age, I think it's important that you are unique. So, for example, if you decide to call yourself, say, Cullies or something, and you want to do electrical goods from warehouses, I think you're going to have a real problem with a name clash with Currys, and you might well find that 80% of your marketing spend actually drives traffic to Currys. So I think the diligence process of searching in places like AdWords for your business proposition on Facebook, Twitter, even Instagram, search those popular social media sites, see what comes up. But be savvy about it. I noticed my son has a picture on his computer which says the best place to hide a dead body is on page 2 of Google search results. So, you know, there is truth in that. However, I am one of the obsessives who, when I'm looking for something, will refine my search and go to page 4 and 5. But definitely do your diligence. Go beyond the first page of Google results. Go and look where the dead bodies are. You know, and put in keywords like for example, let's say you want to call your entity Oddball. So put into Google, Oddball is rubbish, see what comes up. Oddball is fantastic, see what comes up. Because hopefully what you're going to find is there's not too many results and not too many results and nothing with great emotional strength. Then you know that bit of internet is available for you to use and to make your own.
And I think the other thing with that, was type it in as oddball as well as oddball one word, and also just sort of think about how many different ways you can spell it and type that in and search for it, so that you've covered everything in that environment.
I was just going to say, do you think when Currys first started up, a lot of people searched for Currys and ended up with restaurants?
No, because Currys was there long before the internet. And probably long before Currys.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on the founder's name, I think.
Yes, it is. They used to live in Gerrards Cross.
Just by the way.
Yeah.
Alan, how important is it that the name you choose doesn't become a cliche?
To be honest, the type of businesses that this program's aimed at, it probably doesn't matter at this point in time, because what they're trying to do is get their name established. As startup businesses, many of them probably be quite happy it would become a cliche in the future, but because it probably means that they've been successful. But if you are starting a business, you've got to do all the things that we've talked about. Make sure it's memorable, unique. It doesn't necessarily have to convey what you do, but depending on the type of business you're in, it will certainly help. And also the example you used of a plumber, it does help if you put the geographical thing in there, because if it is Watford plumbers, they're probably not going to be sending people up to Inverness to do plumbing jobs unless it's a huge contract, for example. So follow all the things that we've said, I would say. The cliche side of things, worry about that when you become a big multinational.
Right, okay.
I would say, actually, just following on from the location mention, that actually have a little bit of a vision as well. So perhaps, for instance, rather than calling yourself Watford-based something or other, maybe Hertfordshire-based, or maybe North London-based, or if you really think you're going to go bigger and go beyond it, leave the location out.
Yeah, okay. So time is against us. So very briefly, what would be the one tip, Catherine, we'll start with you, that you would give when people are thinking of a name? And then after we've done these tips, we'll do a tip of the week. So if you're thinking about a name, what would you say is the most important thing?
I would say if you're going to go for something humorous, make sure it works. For instance, we've got the Codfather up the road from us. Obviously, it's a fish and chip shop. In the same vein, there's something, I think there's one called The Place to Be, again, a fish shop. Make sure that it has a bit of a resonance with the people around you. Test it out. If you get a lot of people grimacing and going, oh, then the chances are you might actually put people off. So just test out something that's a little bit obscure.
Okay, Kevin, what would be your one tip when naming?
Well, my tip follows on from Catherine's, which is, in terms of testing it, don't ask your friends, don't ask your family. Go to a coffee shop or something and say, I'm thinking of starting a business, and here are 3 titles. Which of them do you think is best? Make sure you Google are infamous for this thing. It's called A/B testing, where they have 2 colors and they ask people which they prefer, and then the color that people prefer gets promoted. So don't ask your friends, family, because they're not going to offend you and tell you anything you don't want to hear. Go and ask some strangers who have nothing to lose by telling you the truth. That was my tip.
Okay, Jonathan, what would your tip be?
I think to verify one of Kevin's remarks just then, remember the Ford Granada with the sad face was designed on the back of people going and asking other people, is this the way you want your car to look? And it was the most unsuccessful car you could ever imagine. I mean, it was probably engineered very well, but it looked like it had a serious problem. Anyway, that's neither here nor there.
Flaw in methodology, Jonathan. Flaw in methodology.
Well, you ask 100 people what they like about something, and quite often they don't know what they like about it. They just like it. So you just have to be careful how you use research and how you take the results out of it. But I just caution that if you do it all by public opinion, you can end up with a Granada. Tips in terms of, I think try and make it memorable and try and make sure to give the name that gives you a bit of free space in your environment, and particularly within the internet. But don't be surprised if you come up with something that's genius that hundreds of people try and copy it.
Okay, Alan, what would be your one tip when naming?
I would say go to the internet. There are hundreds of, well, there's lots of tools on the internet to help with naming a company. There's lots of examples, work-through examples of how companies have been named, how brand names have been chosen. So do a bit of research, and it may well help you if you are struggling to come up with a name.
Okay, that's great. And each week we ask the panel or I ask the panel to come up with their tip of the week in general marketing that's relevant either because it's something that's in the news or because it's something they're keen and passionate about. So since I can see Jonathan, we'll start with Jonathan. What's your tip of the week?
Okay, I mean, this is a follow-on from last week. We had the discussion last week about company logos, which is really more an issue for big companies than small companies. But let's say you want to do some research on company logos. I went onto Pinterest and I sort of typed in one for good company logos, and there's a list of 40 brand logos with hidden messages, which includes the likes of FedEx, Amazon, Pinterest, Gillette, Vio, loads of them, where they've used something about the product and the brand in the name and in the logo to make you sort of understand a bit more about their business. There is a deep pleasure, though, in going and having a look at the ones that went wrong. And some of my favourites are the Catholic Church Archdiocese Youth Commission. If you can look that up and see their logo, there's actually a group of them. Another favourite is the Office of Government Commerce logo, which, when it's printed sideways on, is quite memorable. Anyway, just on that area, careful about how you use humour, careful about how you portray yourself as logos. But there are some genius ones out there. There's also quite a lot of stuff on Pinterest about the evolution of logos, following things like Apple and Ford and Shell and companies like that, which are quite useful if you're thinking about how do I can start off with a name and then build that as my business goes forward. And sometimes, I need to change things because my business has changed direction. So that's also useful in that environment. Anyway, yes, that's my lot.
Okay, because of course one of the things there is, just briefly touching back to naming, is something like 3M, which was the Minnesota Mining and Minerals Company, and then
yes,
became 3M, and it then divested itself of the minerals and the mining and went off and did its own thing. Kevin, what's your tip of the week, please?
Well, my tip of the week was hastily Googled based on what Alan was saying earlier, that there are good tools for finding domains, because I never even thought of that such a thing could exist. So I found one called instantdomainsearch.com. So you can just put in there, I put in the word oddball, so then it tells me very quickly about the sites that are gone with oddball. It's offering alternatives like person2.com, utbal, etbal.net, outball.com. It's available in .co.uk. So that's probably quite an effective tool if you're going to name something and you're thinking of the internet domain. You can see, just in terms of that, I've just noticed that the person2.com is available for 99 cents. Person.com is available, but the price starts from $5,000 change from $2 million. So, obviously a well-funded venture will be buying that one.
Alan, what's your tip of the week?
I suppose one of the things you said that for tip of the week is topical. Just remember that reputations are built over many, many years but can be destroyed in seconds. Just ask Volkswagen.
Yeah, and indeed there's a local case near to where Catherine and I are that's not quite on the Volkswagen scale, but is quite significant nonetheless. Catherine, what's your tip of the week?
I would say, really, in terms of naming your company, don't be afraid. You know, be bold. Look at some of the company names out there, and you know, sort of have a play around with words and even numbers. O2 seem to do pretty well with their name. So yeah, be bold.
Okay, that's great. And my tip of the week is that when you are thinking about protecting your brand and damage the reputation that can happen to your brand when you have bad products, bad services and everything, is to make sure that you have everything lined up to prevent those sorts of things happening, and that you do keep a control of all the parts. It's no good saying we're reliable and building your reputation on being reliable, honest and trustworthy if you then find out that certain departments aren't performing to the same standards as you. So you need to make sure that the culture is the same and matches the brand values throughout the entire organisation. This has been a Link for Growth TV show, and the Marketing Gem. If you want to get back in touch with us on any of the issues discussed today, you can with via Twitter at the Marketing Gem, and it just leaves me to say cheerio. So, Catherine?
Yes, in between coughing fits. Cheerio. See you next week.
Okay. Alan?
Yeah, thanks very much. I've enjoyed today, and look forward to next week's topic.
Okay. Jonathan?
Yes, have a good week, and please, feedback. Anything that you send back to us we'll make use of. But, you know, we've got to live by the same rules as we talk about. So lots of feedback if you can do it.
Okay, that's great. And finally, Kevin?
I just say to everybody, keep business, keep profitable, and see you next week.
Okay. 8, 9, 10.